G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War update for the 2nd of February 2026. As the war grinds on, and I do mean grind, and it's a slow grind, things are looking up. So hopefully, for the people of Ukraine's sake, that politicians who shall remain nameless, but Macron, Starmer, shall get out of sorry about the cough, shall get out of the way, right? Stop. And I know they do why they do it. It's a fundamental belief that if amongst the liberal establishment, if you kick someone down, you must be the one who rises. This is the particularly France pursuing weapons deals, particularly with the Rafale. They have the momentum, particularly with the high costs of the F-35. Europe is trying to undermine the US position globally. Of course, Russia loves this, except when it comes to the fact that they're also undermining Russia's position globally with the Ukraine war. They're trying to undermine China's position, though that is fundamentally caused by China's belligerence. Though the Chinese mindset is to try and win wars without shots fired. So you can pretty much understand that what is going on in Ukraine is so sophisticated that Charlie Day himself, with his big red ribbons and all the connections, would still go over most people's heads because it sounds so fantastic. But Zelensky is pulled in many directions every day. And however, the biggest pull is his own ego. But again, that also is driven by his survival instincts because there's a gun literally to his head, right? Can't disobey his masters in Fleet Street. The psycho media establishment of the British press, the liberal who are the literal mouthpiece of the liberal establishment. BBC has been lying for 50 years. Who knew? About so many events. Now, the war, of course, as we look at the map, at first glance would appear to be just the same old grind. However, what's missing, of course, is the attacks on infrastructure. Now, there are attacks on infrastructure, but there is no attacks on Ukraine energy. Now, the power outages continue, but those are the result of catastrophic failures. Now, some have been fixed. The overload systems have been repaired. Some of the lines have been replaced. Equipment is being brought in by the hour to restore both both lighting and heating to most of. Now, this is from Kiev back, right? This area in here is it's sporadic. Not a lot. A lot of areas have power. See, Ukraine's energy grid is a complex spider web, and you may have two buildings in the same street on different power grids, and those power grids, one's in Romania and one's in southern Ukraine, while you have a power station down the road that you're not connected to. Now, I don't know enough about electrical operations to say with any certainty whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours, but apparently in some cases it's taken months to cross-patch Ukraine's power grid. Now, I think it has something to do with load tolerances, right? Once you start connecting power lines, you're changing the balance of the load, right? Electricity will flow where it wants to flow, not where you want it to flow. And it takes the path of least resistance. So if you're adding new connections, electricity will still want to flow to them. Okay? You have to have literal disconnects and reconnects. And that's what a lot of these big junction stations are that Russia's hit, right? Without these control nodes, right? All the shunts open, right? They create, hitting these substations, right? The substations don't generate power, they distribute it, right? So you hit them and all the shunts open, otherwise, because power overload, right? It's always the assumed position, right? Anything goes wrong, stop supplying power until it's fixed. So Russia's figured out, like, 85 drones in the Sumy, for instance, right? 85 drones over here destroyed a railway yard. Same here, another 85. So when they say, they launched 100 drones and we shut them down, that's actually there. I did not know this. Ukraine has never actually been Pacific. But apparently, we'll go over the story soon. But first, let's just do the quick roundup of the map. So they've hit railway junctions, not power stations. The power stations died because of cold, but it died for the same reason as being hit by a drone. You cause a massive power overload, right? This is what the cold apparently has done, is freeze some of the control mechanisms, the physical connections, right? These big, you've probably seen them, transformers where energy comes in, right? They're filled with oil to insulate and protect them from the cold. But, even oil has its tolerances, and Now, I don't exactly know how it all works, right? But, So we have continuing offensive/defensive operations across the map, where Ukraine and Russia take pot shots. They don't really go crossing trenches, but now and again, the Russian army goes on a mini offensive and bang. So just because they're going slow doesn't mean they're losing or barely winning, as the Wall Street Journal would have you believe, right? Winning or not, it's barely. Now, there was a Russian drone strike on operation. They said a munition, but we all know they meant drone factory. But the Russians have opened up again today after their brief success. They decided to repeat their brief success. And by brief, I mean after a few hours of fighting, they advanced and stopped. But they're doing it again today. It's obviously, it has to do more with cold fatigue. Too long too long exposed to direct winter winds. The chill factor just is what kills it, right? Same with exposed power lines. It's not the cold that's killing them, it's the chill of the wind, right? These bare metal canisters, that's why they put in insulation layers, use things like oil, fiberglass, plastic, non-heat conductive thermoplast, anything to try and stop the heat. Of course, they have to manage the heat in these big transformers, but they can't manage individually every transformer. They have to try and design them for the weather conditions. To stand alone for months, sometimes years, without maintenance. but it's just not working for them, right? Ukraine can't continue to do things on the cheap. Russia found out the hard way too, right? Europe also used to have this problem in the 70s. You know, power outages. Ukraine is one of the few who still suffer winter power outages, although some claim other countries do. I'm saying for now, according to many research, most of Europe has figured out how to keep the lights on in winter. Ukraine seems to know what to do, but they do things cheap anyway. So Russia's launched multiple attacks. Now, these weren't all at the same time, of course. They are probing the Ukrainians. Same here, probing the Ukrainian positions. Here they're trying to launch another offensive, probing and hitting the Ukrainian supply center and command centers. But here they are trying to maintain some momentum after some victories, and yet all they've managed to do is push the last. Right, they've pushed to the river here. They've crossed the river here in a few places, but they've still only got a foothold on Provincia, and it's not that big. Right, some of these places are decimated. Right, it's just that the Russians don't have. Right, they've got to not just. It's all this open area, right? They've got to clear it of mines. They don't have enough personnel to spend days, sometimes weeks, clearing the fields. Okay, this is one of the reasons why this war is going so slow. You literally have thousands of unexploded ordnance, hand grenades. You also got, try and plow a field when you've got brass canisters littered throughout the field. Okay? Most of your plow blades will chip and eventually break. Right? The brass is actually stronger than the plow blades. All right, so Russia's holding on to this, setting up for the siege of Kozgivia. They're trying to maintain any momentum they can and seize what they can. They are fighting on the outskirts of Zelensky. They are trying to push, but so far nothing. Still trying to push here, but there's a lot of clearing. There's trenches, unexploded ordnance, and the Ukrainians keep coming down every day to basically spend their last minutes on this earth fighting over, well, the inevitable, I guess. The regime says, I die, I die. The fatalism, I guess, the pessimism and fatalism of the Slavic people is something their governments exploit, driving home the point, for the motherland, and so you will see Russia has pushed forward a little bit here, and it's only on the outskirts, so it's only a tentative hold. Now, some people have claimed and shown, some parts of Ukraine, right? Beautiful countryside. Not a stir of trouble in the world. But a lot of these villages, not a man to be found. Ukraine is dead. These men should be, this war, win or lose, Ukraine has lost. This is such a level of psychosis, right? Trump is the only one who's called for the killing to stop. And maybe you think Putin Putin could just pull the plug on this war. But Zelensky doesn't just want to end this war, right? He doesn't want to freeze on the battlefield. He wants to continue this war until he gets everything he wants. Right? He says, even if the orcs stop advancing tomorrow, we will not stop until we are in Moscow. And nobody's taking him seriously. You should. When people tell you who they are, you listen. You believe them. When Antifa says they're coming to your home to take your guns, believe me, that is what they want. Okay? They literally want extrajudicial powers because it's the safety for our children. They use all the terms, all the greater good. And it's the same in Ukraine, for the motherland, right? Now you may think, oh, but this is a Russian invasion. Yeah, which could have been over, right? The Russians are only fighting because the Ukrainians attacked first. And nobody seems to want to talk about that because they said, but Ukraine never attacked Russia. Indirectly. From 2014 to 2022. And this is where most people tune out. I get it. Okay? Most people don't want to be told about the war in Donbass, about now, Russia's advanced here. Right? They've taken a third of Telovinte. Right? Now, this is, of course, comes hot on the heels of my previous video saying that the momentum of Russia is slow. It is. It's the slowest in 100 years. Right? But overall, right, 2026 is the slowest they've been in 100 years. But overall, historically, this is the slowest European combat ever since the slop of the Somme. Right? The Battle of the Somme was slop. Human blood, waste, and other body fluids. The air thick with smoke from cordite. The fields literally littered with bodies, helmets, casings, and weapons. And trenches swapped positions sometimes daily. Right? Trenches would start in the morning serving French pancakes, and in the evening German borscht, and then in the morning they would have a British tea. The no man's land, they tried to crack it, and as you know, they eventually cracked it with tanks. And this is where Ukraine, right, thinks that it's new airborne artillery. Right, it's airborne artillery, right? This new mortar drone is going to save them. It's going to remotely kill hundreds of Russians a day, and no Ukrainian will die. Do you realise that Russia has drones, long-range artillery, air defences, long-range missiles? Like, do people actually believe Zelensky's speeches? But because so many Europeans refuse to watch videos like mine, you can only imagine that they are so smooth-brained, so out of touch, right? That maybe they do believe Zelensky when he says, oh, no Europeans are going to die in this war. All you have to do is keep giving me money, right? So they don't think, oh, how many Ukrainians are going to die? They don't think about it. They don't care about it, right? The average French girl, all she cares about is how many diversity points she can get on her social credit rating. And by diversity points is how many coloured dicks she can get in her mouth at once. You know, society is ending, right? and all people can care about is someone booed Taylor Swift. Who cares? Okay? Someone booed Taylor Swift. About time. Long overdue that overhyped harlot, right? She's overrated, right? All she does is sell misery. Now people are questioning her relationship with Kelsey as fake. What? What? He's a paid actor? He's only doing it for sponsorship? No. Tell me it isn't so. A celebrity wedding fake? Oh, no. Now she's saying that she only did it for the approval. And now she's trying to backwalk everything. So if you think for a moment that level of propaganda is not being used in Ukraine and that I am trying to filter and break through it, right? Most of these towns that Russia's fighting over, I'm telling you, there are only small numbers of troops at any one time, right? They know. It's like you look at European wars, the amount of deaths in European wars, right? Then you look at this war and you go, 1,000, right? You look at Thailand, right? 30, 40 a day. There weren't that many. You look at some of the conflicts in Africa. Thousands were killed, but over to Rwanda. But most weren't on the scale of Rwanda, right? Most of them are slow grinds, right? Darfur, 20 years. Somaliland is pretty much over. The northern Somalis are holding against the government forces. Their economy is growing. They're fully independent now of southern Somalia. They're looking at setting trade relations now. But they killed nowhere near as many of their own people. You look at some of the history in wars in India, right? There are Indian wars where there were casualties in the tens. Whereas you compare the same wars with the British, the casualties were in the thousands. Now you might say that's a difference in technology, but it's actually a difference in mindset as well. Right? And when you understand how risk adverse Putin is being, right, you may appreciate, right, that he is trying to preserve, I suppose, what you would say, the legacy, right, to say and look back that he did not inflict unnecessary cruelty on Ukraine to win, unlike, say, Israel and Gaza, or Israel and Lebanon, or the Israeli-backed forces in Syria, there. And you look at the conflict between Iran and Iraq, the original conflicts, small border conflicts, were very low-key. But when they got to mass stage, million plus, Saddam wiping out 1 million. But Saddam's war engineered Saddam's own downfall because he now had millions of Iranians in Iraq, and that displaced his own people. And eventually that displacement led to more and more dissatisfaction, turning southern Iraq into... And the whole Kuwait war was an attempt to try and push out the Sunni without... not the Sunni, the Shia, without pushing out the Shia, to cut the influence of outside influences, as it was called. But it was too late, right? And this is what Putin's looking at in Ukraine, right? Zelensky inherited a bloody conflict. He won the election on the promise of ending it. By all rights and standards, he should be hung, right, or resign, or forced out of office or replaced for failure. Okay? Fundamental failure. The very least, he should have been put on a trial, an election. It's technically a trial, the public, the jury. But those who want to protect democracy don't want to protect democracy, but they don't believe in anything they say. They don't want to do anything about Ukraine. Now, this is the last big push. For most of the rest is long-range strikes. Nothing of consequence. No city of consequence since Chavez has fallen. Now, technically, yes, Myriad and Pavosk. Well, Pavosk ceased being a rail distribution hub long, right, when the Russian forces advanced, right, started flanking these lines. Most of your logistics command, right, moved back long before the Russian forces arrived. Right, you've got Kramatorsk and Dnipro. These, like, you look at the number of military bases in Ukraine, and most of them built in the last 10 years. You're not going to convince me otherwise, okay? That Ukraine was building up for a war with Russia, okay? They crunched the numbers, right? They knew strategic pressure that if Russia committed to Ukraine, Europe would be justified in their war, and America would have been forced into it, right? So Russia calculated strategically to the man and spent years probably lobbying, querying, investigating, and undermining the European position in Ukraine as best as they could, but eventually they could not break the mercenary army that was and still is being used in Ukraine, okay? The majority of Ukrainians fighting, allegedly, are foreign Ukrainians, predominantly Canada, Poland, and the United States, right? Victoria Nuland put this war together, allegedly, for 10 years. So, leading up to Obama, this war was already planned way back in the days of Bush. So this lends credence to the Uni-Party theory of many, right, that of course you see with the so-called libertarians, which is what McAfee called out, how the Libertarian Party sabotages itself time and time again, that it has no goal other than getting attention, right, for a few, right? The Libertarian Party only exists to get attention for a few, and its backers merely back to the minimum, knowing that this is just a vote spoiler to make sure that some states say blue and then some states say red. That there are no alternatives, right? In red states, there should be at least two conservative parties by now. In most blue states, there should be a little L and a big L liberal by now. But it's not. They haven't split. Why? Because the people who control the funding of political parties won't fund the alternatives to any degree, right? The only reason, that's why progressive, it's because they're funding progressives, right? Progressives cause chaos. Chaos brings war. War brings profits. And gets rid of the competition for women. If you do not think that this is all about the competition for women and resources, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry you still naively think that people go to war for noble causes. Now, a lot of these pictures, right? A lot of these pictures are file photos. Right? This is a Ukrainian website, and predominantly they get their information from the alleged Voice of Ukraine, the Kiev Independent, and RBC, mini BBC, right? But yeah, this is where they factually admit drone strikes, attacked station, repair shops, and administrative building. These are the fires you see normally from a distance without context. And I would say, enterprise. Yeah, they claim it's civilian logistics. Yeah, 85 drone strikes. But we eventually shut down. But at the same time, we hit different locations, and yet we checked the map. No, they didn't. So their own propaganda arm, left and right, are not on the same page. Time and time again, right? Now, you may say, what's this? Oh, these are just bases. There's no successful attack by Ukraine, right? They did any drones were shot down before they left Ukraine. They didn't even cross the Russian border, right? So their left hand doesn't even know what the right hand is doing. They are so busy pumping out propaganda every day, right? Looking for stories of, oof, shit, look, well, we found what happened to all your foreign aid. All right, so miners were killed. Yeah, literally. Yeah, anything but military targets. I've told you, there's no point in reading this out to you or going deep into any of these stories. Okay, we have heard stories that Russia's been using captured Starlinks as a means to get drones to deep strike into Ukraine. Right? Starlink terminals, right? They capture a Starlink terminal, right? Put it on a long-range drone, fly it into Ukraine, and use it as a relay to bring in more drones. Quite clever! So now we know how Russia is able to successfully do deep strikes. The Ukrainian radar and air defenses quite literally think it's just another Ukrainian drone. It's Starlink. Right, so new talks, we'll get to that shortly. That's what's left of, allegedly a house after it was hit by a Russian drone. If the drones were this successful, right, yeah. No. Right. Now, of course, yes, a second round of talks following negotiations, though they've appeared to make some progress, although it's infinitesimal. The issue of territory. Now, the progress, according to some on Telegram, particularly Turkish observers in the media, believe that they have alternative proposals of a land deal, right, where Ukraine cedes, right, the predominant areas captured, right, and all these wiggly lines get straightened out, right, an average, right, draw a new map, right, but Russia has to give up these northern areas, right? They have to, so some of these areas, right, they'll snip through here, basically probably cut off here, cut off all these little higgly-piggly bits, right? As I said, there are some natural borders which Ukraine should have used from the beginning, right, as their key strategic points. But they're defending Ukraine based on old information, old battles, where, you know, oh, we had a battle at Kursk, we'll have another one at Kursk. We had a battle some time ago at Pavosk. I think it was 42 at the railway station. So we'll defend the railway station, you know. they're not very imaginative or creative. What they are is professional parrots. They memorize and repeat because that is the predominant reward in society. You go to a maths class, you memorize some A plus B equals C. A plus B equals B plus A. C minus B equals A. C minus A equals B. You memorize stuff like that. You do some basic breakdowns, draw a chart, and you get pat in the head, and you never give a context of what you can use this for. Because they're basically logical processes, right? Magic, your brain is supposed to figure it out. If you don't, after a few years, you tune out and don't do maths again, right? And if you do magically figure out what you can use it for, you probably go on to greater and greater logics, and eventually the university system filters more and more of you out until there's only a few people who do maths, people who do high-end calculus for computer simulators, that sort of thing, engineering puzzles. So, yeah, it's all to filter you out, right? The military does this too, right? They get you to carry out stupid rituals in order to filter you out because the military is all about point and shoot. But it's also picking the best spot to point and shoot from. So they teach it to you without telling you, right? You can capture the hill. Why? Well, they don't want to sit you on top of the hill. They want to sit an artillery piece behind that hill and fire over the hill, using you as a meat shield to stop troops from coming up and shooting the artillery operators. And also, hopefully you figure out that, oh wait, that's where the enemy's mortar is. That's where the enemy's artillery is. You know? And oh wow, you get to be a sergeant and get to stand back and send men in. If you can capture hills good enough, you might even be promoted to a lieutenant and lead and go from leading men from the front to leading men from behind. And so it goes. And this is what's going on in Ukraine, to the point where Ukraine is desperately trying to figure out how it can prolong this war to collapse the Russian economy. Because they figured out they can't beat them on the battlefield. No. Really? Took them long enough, right? The Europeans' calculations was great. NATO admits to making a miscalculation, right? When they say they miscalculated, they're not talking about, I'm taking a calculated risk. I mean, they literally tried to calculate this war, and we miscalculated, right? They had no idea of the effects of drones, and when Ukraine was highly successful with drones, they thought they had this in the bag by 2023, and by 2024, as Russian drones increased. Now, yeah, the Iranian jihad, this is thanks to Biden. So, really, the reason why Ukraine is losing is thanks to Biden, right? All the equipment in Afghanistan, Russia's non-equipment, Russia's artillery improvements in artillery, the Russians' improvement in many fields. It's Russian research, of course, stolen American equipment, you know, the pride of Russian research. But you cannot deny, right, that Zelensky has made a decision that most a year ago would not think would happen, and that is to resume a second round of talks. Now, of course, it was Putin said hold it in Moscow, Zelensky says hold it in Kiev. The typical political no. Instead of just saying no, he says no. He says, yes, I agree to talking with you in Kiev. And so, you know, they both get a holiday in Abu Dhabi, you know, because Zelensky wants to be anywhere but Ukraine, just in case Russia does decide the aunt solution goes ahead. I don't blame him. Would you be in Ukraine if that was a possibility? But, however, let's not beat about the bush. Nothing's going to happen with war crimes in Ukraine. There's going to be a few retributions post-war. That's about it. But nobody in the West will acknowledge the killing of civilians by Ukraine, and they will want to go after Russians. So Zelensky, however, has said that he wants to continue martial law until this crisis is over. When asked by the Czech Republic what does he mean, he says when the last Russian is off Ukrainian soil. He is apparently Czechoslovakian newspaper has published that Zelensky acknowledges the battlefield shortages, urging draft-age men living abroad. This is what I mean, right? Recruiting abroad now openly. They have been for over a year. It's just most people don't see the ads, so they don't believe me. And of course, the ads are random, so you never know when you're actually going to get one. So, yeah. But also, yeah, apparently there's a bill before the Ukrainian Parliament to extend the emergency until, so basically he's getting a full term unelected, right? So every 90 days he wants a rolling rollover on, and they will now vote to end it. Rather than voting to continue, this new bill, apparently they're going to be voting to overturn it. But surveys, including the International Institute of Sociology, believe that trust is declining and has been since last year. Amidst the corruption scandal, Western media said Ergenton case has damaged his standing. Yeah, there's Ursula von der Leyen has stopped returning his calls. He's now shunted to Macron or Merz. Keir Starmer is not directly dealing with Zelensky much, but he has met with him a few times. You know, foreign governments are not meant to meet each other on such regular basis. Not even in the EU do they meet that often. Right? You have a country to run. You haven't got time to indulge in personal politics. But unfortunately, this is what more and more world leaders are doing. This is the... what's his name? Not Mitterrand, before Mitterrand, although it is Mitterrand. The de Gaulle effect, right? De Gaulle was more famous for his grandstanding, his speeches and his parades than actually as French president. He was an absolute failure, right? Foreign policy, his stance on NATO, everything. You look up, right? This is why Mitterrand was eventually became more famous and more regarded by French citizens than de Gaulle, who now just see him as the little general who could, and only could because of it's funny, right? You had French military advisors in Vietnam, yet de Gaulle had American military advisors. And he was trying to pass on the same information, despite the fact that the information for the war in Algeria is quite different from the war in Vietnam. And again, French bundling and French socialists undermine French positions everywhere they go. This is the problem. The French should just take these socialists out and spank them. But, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? This eventually, you have to decide. And the French couldn't figure out what to do. So, So they lost wars they could have won and won wars and always relied on foreign assistance since. And they can't get out of their own shadow anymore. But, they can't bury the past because politics. They can't expel foreigners because fact is a lot of them are half-breed French. We don't know how many, right? But Because they won't hold a DNA test for French citizenship or anything like that, because they don't want to be like the Nazis. Yeah, you're headed down that road in many countries now, right? But Russia's advances in Ukraine, pretty much smashed through Ukrainian lines. But again, they only, when they hit the town, they stopped. So, again, this is deliberate, slow grind, right? The slow grind in Ukraine is deliberate. It is not because Ukraine is winning. It's because Ukraine is just throwing enough landmines out there to slow the Russians down. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but I am hoping that tomorrow we'll have an update on the agenda for peace, the Peace Council, and many other proposals for peace in Ukraine, what they are actually proposing. So right now, anybody talking about the leaks from the peace proposal, right now, there's only speculation, right? Even the Wall Street Journal admits that it's speculating. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Thank you to all those who've joined my Patreon. Hope to see more of you over there. And please buy my book. See you in the next video, and bye for now.